I think it really forces you to think about what you want to do for your life and how to lead the fullest life possible and do the things you want to do and reach your dreams and have as much meaning as possible in your life. And I think that actually helps you live a longer and better life to do those types of things. All of you, I think, should do is to sort of say, well, right now, young and in vigorous health and stuff and things like that, I would want everything possible to be done with me to keep me alive and to be as happy and joyful as I am right now to keep going. But there may be times that you say, gee, I don't want to cross that line and I wouldn't want to have this particular thing done to me when I'm 90. It's something one revisits over time. Best times to do it are when it's really not imminent, but it's something that you have time to think about, you have time to talk to your loved ones about, and you really spend some time thinking about what you might want, not at the moment when you come in the hospital really sick and do you want this tube in your mouth or do you want to have cardiac resuscitation. It's a hard conversation at that point, but that's often when it seems that it's most the people saying you got to do it, and so it's a hard time to do it though.
Wouldn't just, when the chips were down at 2 a.m. say, well, why don't you go do your first blood draw? You practice on a peer, you practice on a resident, somebody watches you, and then you get let loose. We should do the same thing with this really important procedure. And that requires us to kind of get over the hump of sort of saying, that's too serious, that's that death stuff. We have to just sort of think of it as, it's just one other thing that I'm kind of stoked to figure out because then I'll be able to be good at it. It's really common for residents and even sometimes fourth-year medical students to be on the wards dealing with somebody who's really sick. And here they are having to talk them through difficult situations. And they may be pretty well in possession of the facts of the case and have a sense of what they think the prognosis is. They might know what they would do if it were them lying in the bed. But here they are having to relay that to a family member or a patient, and they're oftentimes under the gun. They're super busy. And so, these are challenging things to talk about, and you probably need some skills, some practice doing it. But if you also are trying to do it and you know that the pages are starting to come in or you gotta go admit that new person in the emergency room, it's that much harder. And my experience as a student and a resident and what I've seen is that people stumble through it and I think they feel anxiety through it and they kind of feel like, oh gosh, did I make them feel worse with the way I asked those questions? Did I make it seem like it was a gloomy prognosis or did I not quite say the honest thing I needed to say? Because they were feeling their way through it. I talk with people about doing advanced directives. I talk with patients about needing them. I educate students about it. So I felt like I would be sort of a hypocrite if I didn't have one myself. I'm pretty healthy and I don't anticipate anything going wrong soon. But it was really interesting to talk with my wife about our advanced directives. She filled one out, I filled one out. We talked with our families about it. We showed them to our primary care docs, got them on the record. And there weren't huge surprises. But there were a couple of things that my wife and I didn't exactly see eye to eye on. And I was a little surprised. Had I just been kind of assuming, well, heck, we're both healthy, we're in the same camp, I would have been wrong. And way more importantly than what we wrote on that piece of paper, the conversations we had with our loved ones about, oh, we did this and you should do this. And by the way, what would you think if something happened to you? Were just kind of bonding experiences with us. And I learned stuff that I tucked away that I'm kind of glad I know. And in fact, it turned out that maybe 2 years after that conversation, somebody I loved deeply suddenly got a life-threatening illness. And being more prepared to help him go through that myself, he knows that I'm a physician, was so comforting. I didn't feel quite as uncertain. So highly recommended. Instead of Netflix and chill that evening, fill out an advanced directive. It's not super serious, and I actually think it's kind of a comforting thing to go through.
We avoid the subject of death. Yet in medicine, and unfortunately death is present, death is common in the things we do. So I think it's important for medical students to actually think about the topic because it's something they'll be dealing with in their medical careers. And in general, I think medicine has not done as well as it can in preparing people for death or preparing people for the type of death they want, or even more importantly, preparing people for the life they want before death. So I think as medical students, even though they're very young, you get to even think about that subject. One of the things that it'll help them do is then be able to talk better to patients. And once again, I think it's not about death and what happens during death. It's about what is the lines that you don't want to cross to be alive.
One of the reasons why I filled out my advanced care directive is because it really helped me identify some of my core values and beliefs. And not only did it do that, but it kind of forced me to share those values and beliefs with my family members. And while many of them already knew those beliefs, it helped solidify them and make them clear for everyone to know, which I think is really important. I would say the biggest challenge was just actually initiating the conversation, because it's whenever I go home, we tend to just not have like serious, deep conversations, and it kind of takes an initial hurdle to get over just to start the actual conversation. So I would recommend, if you guys are thinking about talking to your family or friends about kind of your end-of-life care values and beliefs, I would just recommend just asking a single question, and that really helps get the ball rolling. And don't be afraid to ask it, because in retrospect, my family members were extremely appreciative and thought the conversation helped themselves as well. Just propose one question, such as, what activities make you feel alive? Or if you could control 3 things about your last day on this planet, such as who would be there, what food you'd be eating, etc., what would those 3 things be? And I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at the response from your family members by these questions. They would learn a lot from it, and you would certainly learn a lot from it as well. I would strongly encourage you just to don't be shy about asking these questions with your family members and loved ones.
Something interesting that I learned from this process of having advanced care directive conversations with my family was that there's lots of cultural nuances that you come across. Like, for instance, I know that my parents were not very receptive to talk about death all the time, because they felt like I'm always talking about depressing things. But I think after having these conversations a couple of times, we realized that we were all on the same page. My parents wanted the best thing for me if I were ever to be in an accident, and I wanted the same thing. And after approaching this topic in different ways, we realized the importance of having these conversations, and it really did bring my parents and I closer, and I was finally able to make the right decision of choosing who I wanted to represent as my healthcare agent. I also feel like it surprisingly took me much longer than I had anticipated. We started working on this project first year, and it's taken almost like 2 years, just because from the moment that you start thinking that you want to have this conversation to when you actually have the kind of conversation that you value and want to have, it takes a decent amount of time and effort. I'm glad that I was able to have a conversation about this, because I think it has brought my family closer together, and I think we are better prepared for a situation where we might need to use an advanced care. And that's why I encourage everyone to have a conversation, because that's what this is about. It's about the process of thinking about advanced care directives and about the conversations that we really would like to emphasize, and then actually fill out an advanced care directive. And as Thomas mentioned, Tina is right here, and we can get it notarized really easily. So yeah.